Welcome to the complete story of Final Fantasy XII, a game that is perhaps as beloved by some as it is underappreciated by others. Final Fantasy games seem to have a habit of changing things up, and in the case of Final Fantasy XII, many seem to have felt that the game diverges too significantly from what they had come to expect from a Final Fantasy game. For those who are able to get on board, however, Final Fantasy XII features a satisfyingly intricate political plot, fueled by excellent character drama, all the while being delivered by well-written dialogue and some of the best world building the series has ever seen. I'm Pétur from Birds of Play, and in this video I hope you'll join me as we revisit the world of Ivalice to celebrate the story of Final Fantasy XII. We have a long journey ahead of us, and I hope you'll be with us every step of the way. A crowd gathers as a parade marches through the streets of Rabanasta to celebrate the union of Princess Ashe of Dalmasca and Prince Rassler of the neighboring kingdom of Nalbina. The two of them blissfully fond of one another despite the political nature of their marriage. The couple's happiness is short-lived, however, as the Arcadian Empire invades Nalbina, forcing Prince Rassler to return to defend his homeland with the aid of Dalmasca. Charging into the fray at the Battle of Nalbina Fortress, Rassler is struck by an arrow and killed, his lifeless body carried off by Captain Basch von Rosenberg of Dalmasca, as the fortress falls into the hands of the Empire. With his native country all but obliterated, Rassler is laid to rest in Rabanasta, his now widowed wife, Princess Ashe, greatly mourning his loss. After the fall of Nalbina, the Arcadian Empire sets its sight on Dalmasca with overwhelming military might. Seeing no other way to save his people, King Rabanasta agrees to sign a treaty, conceding to imperial rule. Upon hearing that the treaty signing is not but a pretense to murder the king, Captain Basch, along with his good friend and comrade Vostler York Azelas and the young soldier Rex, infiltrates the palace in order to save him. Rex gets separated from the others, and as he finally catches up to them, he is shocked to find the king murdered by none other than Basch himself. A fact Basch divulges freely to Rex as he stabs him, just before being captured by Imperial soldiers. In the aftermath, Marquis Ondor, ruler of the neutral city-state of Bhujerba, announces that Princess Ashe has taken her own life, and that the traitor Basch has been put to death. His hope being that with these news, the people of Dalmasca can once again know some semblance of peace, even as they are to be governed by the Arcadian Empire. 2 years later, Vaan, an orphan street urchin and the younger brother of Rex, is running through the streets of Rabanasta, having just picked the pockets of an Imperial soldier. The rationale being that it isn't really stealing, since he's just taking back what the Empire took from Dalmasca. His good friend Penelo cautions him about his behavior, telling him that orphans like them need to stick together. Vaan, however, has other plans, as he dreams of escaping his lot in life by becoming a sky pirate, free to go where he wills. Later on, the two of them watch as Vayne Cardua Solidor gives a heartfelt speech to the people of Dalmasca, telling them that he will gladly bear the brunt of their hatred, as long as they honor the late king's wish for peace, swaying the populace to his way of thinking, much to the surprise of Vaan and Penelo. Not one to bow down to the Empire, Vaan plots to infiltrate the royal palace with the help of old Dallon from the low town slums, using the fete held to commemorate Vayne as Dalmasca's new consul to distract from his illegal activities. While looting the treasure, Vaan comes across the goddess's magicite hidden inside a statue and meets Balthier, a sky pirate bent on stealing the consul's treasures, and his companion Fran, a Viera warrior. Balthier demands Vaan's treasure, but Vaan wants to keep his find and makes his escape. As the thieves bicker amongst themselves, the underground Dalmascan resistance stages a military coup, in an attempt to remove the consul from office and reclaim Dalmasca from the Empire. Vaan, having foreseen this, eventually has the Ifrit, an Imperial warship ready in position to blast away the opposition. Balthier demands Vaan's newfound treasure, but as Vaan refuses to hand it over, Balthier is forced to take him along for the ride, as they make their escape on a hoverbike. Before they are in the clear, however, the goddess's magicite Vaan had pilfered from the treasury just moments ago robs the bike of its power, leading the newly formed threesome to continue their getaway via the city's sewer system, the Garam Scythe waterway. Forming a temporary truce, Balthier, Fran and Vaan look for a way out of the sewers. But on the way they are met with Amalia, the leader of the resistance, who was separated from her companions while retreating after their failed attack. Amalia joins the party, even though she has little patience for the trio's thievery. The group is captured by the Imperial Guard led by Vaan, under the assumption they are thieves, and Amalia is escorted away. Vaan, Balthier and Fran are to be sent to the Nalbina dungeons, and as Vaan's childhood friend Penelo sees Vaan being escorted away in chains, she runs to the group. She is halted by Balthier, who wants to avoid a scene and promises to bring Vaan back safely. Nearby, a group of Banga bounty hunters, with a vendetta against Balthier, take a note of his kindness towards Penelo. Having been thrown unconscious into the Nalbina dungeons, Vaan sees a vision of his brother Rex, wherein he tells him that even if he was a part of the assassination of the king, he isn't to blame, since Captain Bash must have tricked him into it. Rex disappears in the vision, having already passed away in real life, and Vaan leaves behind a bouquet of Galbana lilies in the empty chair he leaves behind. Waking up in the dungeon, Vaan is greeted by Balthier and brought up to speed on the situation, as he informs him that Fran is in the process of finding them a way out. As Vaan wanders around the facility, he gets in trouble with some Sikh, as he tries to come to the defense of a fellow inmate being beaten to death. Before Vaan can suffer the same fate, however, Balthier comes to his aid, and together they fend off the horde. After the battle, the dungeon is visited by a headhunter by the name of Bagamnon, who has come looking for Balthier, not one to mind his manners. Bagamnon disrespects the Imperial soldiers present, but is quickly silenced by the arrival of Arcadian Judge Magister Gabranth. That puts him in his place with a few well-placed words. As Gabranth and Bagamnon go their separate ways, Fran notifies Balthier and Vaan that she has found them a way out, and Balthier explains that as a Viera, Fran has extraordinarily sharp senses. Following Gabranth, the party ventures deeper in the dungeon. Unknowingly, Gabranth leads him to a cage where Captain Bash is being held captive. The rumors of his execution apparently having been greatly exaggerated. Gabranth mocks Bash and asks why he yet lives, which Bash replies is only to be used as a bargaining chip to silence Marquis Ondo that had previously announced his execution. Once Gabranth leaves, Bash senses the presence of others, and as they approach the cage, Balthier tells Bash that he has no words for Kingslayers, which Bash responds to by vehemently denying to have killed the king. Vaan, not being as forgiving as Balthier, jumps onto the cage, condemning Bash for what he has brought down upon Dalmasca and his brother Rex. The noise alerting the guards and forcing Fran to drop the cage down into the hole below, with Threesome riding the cage with Bash still inside as they make their escape. The fall breaks the cage open and frees Bash, letting him accompany them as an extra sword arm as they make their way through the Barheim passage, an abandoned mine crawling with monsters. Halfway through the mines, Bash tells them the truth of what happened that fateful night. The truth being that he was framed by his twin brother Gabranth as a scheme hatched by Vaan to strip Dalmasca of its sovereignty, Gabranth being the true Kingslayer, as he impersonated Bash, and Vaan's brother Rex being the witness they needed to have everyone believe that the captain had killed the king. Upon escaping the Barheim passage, they make their way back to Rabanasta, where they part ways. Once Balthier and Fran have left, Vaan heads off by himself to see Penelo. When Penelo is nowhere to be found, Vaan goes to see Old Dallin to show him the treasure he got from the palace. Old Dallin tasks him with delivering a sword of the Old Order to Vossler of the Resistance, and in exchange, Vaan asks Old Dallin to look into the whereabouts of Penelo for him. When Vaan arrives at the Resistance hideout, a heated argument about Bash's return is already underway. Bash pleads to Vossler to let him help them rescue Amalia, but Vossler cannot trust Bash after all that has transpired. A lone agent, Bash asks Vaan to take him to Balthier so that he can make use of his airship. Along the way, Vaan makes peace with Bash, affirming his belief in his innocence. The two of them find Balthier, along with Fran, at the Sandsea Tavern, where they find out that Penelo has been kidnapped by the Banga headhunter Bagamlan and his group in an effort to get to Balthier. Vaan begs Balthier to take them to Bhujerba and offers him the goddess's magicite as payment. Balthier reluctantly agrees, and Bash tags along, hoping to get an audience with the Marquis. Balthier, Fran, Vaan, and Bash fly to Bhujerba to free Penelo and Balthier's airship, the Strahl. Vaan, who dreams of becoming a sky pirate one day, is especially excited for the trip. Upon arriving in Bhujerba, they meet a boy who overhears them talking about entering the Lushu mines. He introduces himself as Lamont and asks to join them. As they reach the entrance of the mines, they encounter Judge Magister Geese, returning from an inspection of the mines along with Marquis Ondor. The party stumbles onto a magicite excavation site, a magical mineral that keeps the sky continent afloat over Ivalice. Lamont pulls out a piece of manufactured nethicite, a blue crystal that reacts to the local magicite, confirming his suspicions. The Lushu mines are providing magicite to the Draclaw laboratory in Arcades for the secret research on manufactured nethicite behind Emperor Gramus's back. Likely via machinations by Vaan and Dr. Zidolfa's demon Bonanza, the Empire's leading nethicite researcher. As a surprise to Lamont, Balthier recognizes the piece as manufactured nethicite and demands to know where he got it from. They are interrupted by Bagamlan and his gang. Vaan calls for Penelo, but Bagamlan had already let her go and attacks the party. During the commotion, Lamont escapes, urging the others to follow. After getting rid of Bagamlan, the party finds Judge Geese has captured Penelo. Furious to have discovered an outsider wandering the mines full of the Empire's secrets, Lamont recognizes Penelo as the girl Vaan and the others had come to rescue and comes to her aid. Geese is left dumbfounded as Lamont escorts Penelo to Marquis's Ondor estate as his guest. The others follow the exchange from the shadows, and Balthier explains Lamont is none other than Larsa Ferinas Solidor, the younger brother to Vaan and the Emperor's son, and thus second in line for the throne of Arcadia. Larsa is staying at the Marquis's estate under the pretense of a holiday, but his true intention is to travel Ivalice and discern its political situation, as although Larsa is young, he is interested in world affairs. Vaan spreads rumor of Bash still being alive to discredit the Marquis and catch the local resistance attention to gain an audience with Ondor. The ploy works, and Vaan and his friends are brought to the Marquis. Vaan asks for Penelo, but she has already left. She has gone on board the Imperial flagship dreadnought Leviathan as Larsa's guest. Bash tells the Marquis Amalia is being held captive on board by Judge Geese, and Ondor would like to see her saved, but getting personally involved would compromise Bhujerba's position. Thus, he captures Bash, Vaan, Balthier, and Fran, and has them sent to Judge Geese on board the Leviathan under the pretense of helping the Empire catch the Nalbina dungeon escapees, but his true motivation is to have Bash and the others save Amalia. Bash, Vaan, Balthea and Fran are brought to Geese and find him with Amalia, who is revealed to be Princess Ash. Ash recognizes Bash as the Kingslayer and is angered that he is still alive. Bash wants to trade their freedom for the location of the royal heirloom, a piece of day-affected nethicite called the Dusk Shard, but Ash objects. The goddess's magicite in Vaan's pocket begins to shine in Ash's presence, revealing itself as the Dusk Shard, an heirloom of the Dynast King that points to the Dynast King's kin as the rightful heir. Geese is delighted that the party has delivered the nethicite right to the Empire's hands, and seizes the Dusk Shard from Vaan, much to Ash's frustration. They are imprisoned, with Ash quartered separately, but freed by Vossler, who apparently had a change of heart and came to their aid in an imperial disguise. Joined by Vossler, the party searches the Leviathan for Ash's cell and frees her. She is still angered by Bash's presence, but he swears his innocence and loyalty to Dalmasca and thus to her. As they look for an exit, the reassembled party runs into Laza and Penelo, who have befriended during the time they've spent together. Laza is keen to see a peaceful resolution to the conflict, and believes he could convince his father, the Emperor, to allow Ash to reclaim Dalmasca if she will ally with the Empire. Thus, he decides to aid the party's escape, and gives Penelo his piece of manufactured nethicite as a good luck charm and memento of their meeting. The party heads for an exit, but runs into Judge Geese, who hurls magic at them that is absorbed by Penelo's piece of manufactured nethicite. After being in awe of the nethicite's power, the party defeats Geese and escapes on a carrier ship piloted by Balthea back to Bhujerba. Back in Bhujerba, the group has another meeting with the Marquis. Ash wants to expand the small resistance she and Vossler started back in Rabanasta to create a force strong enough to reclaim Dalmasca, and thus wants the Marquis's aid. Although Ondor, who is actually Ash's uncle, is glad his plan to have saved her worked, he is not ready to join the resistance. Ondor points out that even if Ash had the means to go to war against the Empire, now that the Dusk Shard has been lost, she has no means of proving her identity as the rightful heir to Dalmasca's throne. Ondor wants Ash to stay with him for her safety, while he continues with his own machinations against the Empire. But Ash knows Ondor will prioritize Bhujerba over Dalmasca, and is not content with sitting aside and waiting while her kingdom suffers. Ash requests Balthea's aid in retrieving another proof of her royal blood, the Dawn Shard, one of the pieces of day-affected nethicite the Dynast King wielded to unite Ivalice in the Galtian alliance hundreds of years ago. While Wraithwall gave two of the pieces away to the ruling houses of the Kingdom of Dalmasca and Nabradia, the third shard was buried with him in the tomb of Wraithwall, with the knowledge of its existence passed down in his royal lineage. The party heads to the Dynast King's tomb on foot, as it is located on a yacht and thus impassable on an airship. They run into Vossler, who wants to join their cause, even if he detests traveling with sky pirates, who are only aiding Ash for the promise of King Wraithwall's treasure. To Balthea's dismay, Wraithwall's treasure turns out to be the control of the Esper Bellius, and not of monetary value. As Ash claims the Dawn Shard, she is met by a ghostly apparition of her late husband Rassler. The party exits the tomb, only to discover the dreadnought Leviathan and the rest of Geese's fleet waiting for them as a result of Vossler having alerted them. As proof of the might of the Empire's manufactured nethicite, they can fly airships even on the yacht. Ash is furious at Vossler's betrayal, who has come to believe opposition is futile, and that acquiescence is the only way to save Dalmasca from further harm. The party is again brought before Geese, who takes the Dawn Shard from Ash. Gleeful, the party has again done the work for the Empire in delivering them with day-affected nethicite. Gies has the party taken away in chains, but succumbs to delusions of grandeur before the stone's power. Gies plans to use the stone to take over the Empire and has its power evaluated by placing the Dawn Shard in the engine of the Leviathan. The engine overheats as mist, the ephemeral magical power of Ivalice, flows from the stone. The mist effusing from the Dawn Shard drives Fran into a frenzy, and she breaks free from her shackles and attacks their captors. The others free themselves as well, but as they make for the exit, they are stopped by Vostler, whom the party is forced to defeat. In his final words, Vostler asks Bash to look after Ash, and as the party escapes on another carrier ship, the Dawn Shard in the Leviathan's engine explodes, destroying the entire fleet. As the Leviathan falls, the party escapes riding the blast wave. But as they spot the Dawn Shard glimmering mid-air in the center of the explosion, they turn back to retrieve it. After witnessing the Arcadian 8th Fleet destroyed by the power of the Dawn Shard, Ash decides to wield it as a weapon against the Empire. As even if the resistance movement she had started was lost when Vostler became a turncoat, she now possessed a weapon of seemingly unimaginable power. As she doesn't know how to use the now lusterless Dawn Shard, Fran suggests to head for Jahara, the village of the Garif, knowledgeable on magicite lore. Ash asks Balthier to accompany her, but he demands a ring on her finger as down payment until he comes across a better treasure. In Jahara, the Garif tell Ash they cannot be of help due to the stone eluding even their ancestors. The Garif chief tells Ash that Dawn Shard has lost its power, as the mist it inhabited has been released, making the Dawn Shard useless as a weapon. They meet Laza, who has come to persuade Ash to join both him and another mysterious ally at Mount Bhujerba to prevent the imminent war between the nation-states of Ivalice. Laza explains his plan for Ash to gain the Grand Kiltias Anastasis' blessing to assume the throne of Dalmasca, and then propose peace to the Empire. The idea of making peace with the Empire that stole everything from her repulses Ash, but she sees no other way to help her kingdom. That night, Ash talks with Vaan, who reveals he also saw an apparition the moment Ash claimed the Dawn Shard from the tomb of Wraithwall, although he thought it looked like his late brother. The two decide to conceal the ghostly encounter from the others. Vaan explains that helping Ash reclaim Dalmasca is his way of stopping running away from his problems. Disgraced by the 8th Fleet's destruction, Vane is called back to Arcadia. He begins to suspect his father and the Imperial Senate will bypass him for Emperor, giving the throne to his brother Laza instead, whom the Senate sees as susceptible to manipulation due to his youth. Gramis is of failing health, and the question of his succession is to come up soon. Gramis tasks Judge Gabranth to spy on Vane, to discern his true intention. The Judge Magisters know Laza is not easily manipulated, and once the Senate realizes this, he may be in danger of being assassinated. Judge Magister Drace and Gabranth talk the matter over and decide to protect Lord Laza for the stability of the nation. Ash decides to trust Laza, and he joins her party on their passage to Mount Bhujerba, the center of the Kiltia faith. While passing through the Gormor jungle, their path is barred by magical barriers set out by the Viera. Fran unveils the Viera settlement of Eruit village, telling the others she is an exile, and the Viera will not be happy to see her. But her younger sister Mjörn may be able to help. In the village, Fran's other sister, Jote, claims Mjörn is not there, and tells Fran to ask the wood for her whereabouts. Fran has spent too long away from the Viera homeland, and her kin no longer consider her a true Viera, as she cannot hear the green word. Jote despises yet pities Fran for her fall, and states the wood says Mjörn is at the local magicite mine. The party travels to the Hanu Mines, another of the Empire's sites of magicite research, and finds the local researchers slain. Larsa becomes agitated at the site and wants to investigate the matter. They find Fran's sister Mjörn deep in the mines acting strangely, holding a piece of manufactured nethicite, being possessed by a shadow with glowing eyes. When Mjörn drops the nethicite, it breaks, releasing her. As Fran rushes to her sister, Mjörn explains she left the wood to explore the world, but was captured and asked to hold a piece of manufactured nethicite to test its effect on Bhujerba. Larsa asks Penelo to return the piece of manufactured nethicite he had given to her earlier, apologizing for not realizing the danger. Back in Erut village, Mjörn is reunited with her kin. Fran asks her to not follow her example and leave the wood, as it only leads to a life of loneliness. Jote gives Fran the Lentis tear to dispel the jungle's magical barriers and asks her never to return. Reaching Mount Boromices, the party speaks to the Grand Kiltias and meets Larsa's secret ally, Al-Cid Margrace, from the ruling house of Rosaria. Although Al-Cid is but one of the many nobles of the ruling class, Larsa hopes that securing his allegiance would help normalize the relations between the nations. If Al-Cid could help Rosaria recognize Ashe as the Queen of Dalmasca. All hope for a peaceful resolution is dashed when it is learned that Vaan has murdered his father and dissolved the Senate, making him the dictator of Arcadia. As Vaan would never allow Ashe to claim Dalmasca peacefully, the murder of the late emperor was blamed on the Senate, providing Vaan with the pretense needed to disband it. Among the judge magisters, only Drace opposed Vaan's ruthlessness, and as she sought to arrest him for high treason, the other judges turned against her. Vaan, knowing Gabranth had been spying on him on Gramis' orders, tests his loyalty by ordering him to execute Drace for turning her blade on the Imperial Lord Sovereign. As Gabranth hesitates, Drace quietly asks him to kill her and to protect Lord Larsa, who will have no one should Gabranth be lost as well. Ashe decides that going to war with the Empire is the only way. As much has become apparent to Ondor as well, who has departed to assemble a resistance, stepping down as the Marquis under pretense of ailing health. As long as Vaan holds the Dusk Shard, however, they will have little chance against the Empire, having witnessed firsthand the power of day-affected nethicite. The Grand Kiltias tells Ashe of another one of Wraithwall's treasure, the Sword of Kings, that can destroy nethicite, hidden in the still shrine of Miriam, to be overlooked by the Grand Kiltias as a neutral party. Leaving Larsa behind at Mount Boromices, the party sets out to retrieve the sword. They find it in the depths of the shrine, but as Ashe attempts to test its might against the lusterless Dawn Shard, Razla's apparition stays her hand. When Ashe later asks Vaan about it, however, he claims not to have seen anything. Razla's ghostly visit convinces Ashe the sword is genuine, and they return to Mount Boromices and find it decimated by the Empire. Vaan's envoys, Judge Magisters Bergen, Sargabath, and Gabranth, were dispatched to pick up Larsa and capture Ashe. While Gabranth had Judge Sargabath take Larsa to Arcades, an enraged Bergen murders the holy man, Grand Kiltias Anastasis, and bombs Mount Boromices. The party confronts him and discovers he has been augmented by the power of manufactured nethicite, and been driven mad as a result, like Mjörn had. Bergen is accompanied by a shadow with glowing eyes. But despite his enhanced powers, he is defeated, as his nethicite-infused body fails him and his ambitions. Ashe and her party decide to destroy the Empire's nethicite with the Sword of Kings, to level the sides for the upcoming war, and head for the Draclaw laboratories in Arcades, to destroy the Dusk and Midlight shards in the possession of Dr. Cid, Balthia's father. While resting at the Vaan Coast Hunters camp, Balthia tells Ash of his relation to Dr. Cid. Years ago, Cid traveled to Yagd-4, but upon his return was never the same again. Seemingly having gone mad, Cid kept talking to thin air about bringing the reins of history back to the hands of man. Unable to bear the sight of his raving father, Balthia had cast aside his privileged family name and his position as a judge to become a sky pirate. Balthia warns Ash of letting the power of the stone consume her, like it did his father. They reach Arcades and gain access to the city's upper levels with the help of Balthia's old acquaintance, Jules. They storm the lab, but find it void of guards. They find Cid's office in a mess, and run into Redus, a rogue sky pirate on a mission much like their own, his presence being the reason for the lack of guards. They team up with him and confront Cid. At first, Cid doesn't know who they are, but after listening to a voice only he can hear, he points out Ash as the princess. The party attacks Cid, but he's protected by the shadow with the glowing eyes he calls a nut. Balthia realizes that Cid hadn't gone mad, and that when it appeared he had been talking to himself, he was in fact speaking to the shadow, Vanat. Cid escapes on a small airship with the piece of day-affected Nethicite, saying he's heading for Giruvegan, the ancient city from where it all started. Redus takes the party to Balfanheim port, the port town of pirates of sky and sea variety alike. Redus is a mysterious man, as no one knows of his past, only that he showed up at Balfanheim one day and united the pirates, becoming the town's governor. The only thing he reveals of himself is that he wishes to see all Nethicite in Ivalice destroyed. Redus had been visited by Marquis Ondor during the latter's quest to assemble the resistance, fueling Ash's determination to catch Cid and destroy his Nethicite. In Yagd-4, the party comes to an impassable wall of mist in the Feywood, but Rastler's apparition quells it. Everyone but Ash is perplexed. They find the gate to Giruvegan and summon the Esperbelias to open it. In the city center, they discover the great crystal where the Ocuria live, who spirit Ash away to an otherworldly dimension. The shadows with the glowing eyes are Ocuria, beings that deem themselves the gods of Ivalice for their immortality. The Ocuria brand Ash their saint and the new Dynast King as the Had Wraithfall before her. They gift her the Treaty Blade to carve out a new piece of day-affected Nethicite from the sun-cryst, the source of all Nethicite power, to achieve power enough to destroy Arcadia and its benefactor, the rogue Ocuria, Vanat. Vanat has taught Dr. Cid the secrets to man-made Nethicite, undermining the Ocuria's power in Ivalice as the true weavers of history. Ash is conflicted as to her course of action, but as an apparition of Rastler grasps the blade's hilt, she follows suit and finds herself back in the mortal world, holding the sword. Ash and the party leave Giruvegan with the knowledge that Dr. Cid has used them to retrieve the Treaty Blade, and had no intention of traveling to Giruvegan. Dr. Cid's gambit for doing this is a mystery, so they head for Balfanheim to talk with the Redus. The political situation in Ivalice is in turmoil, and a fleet Redus had sent to explore the waters of Ayakt has gone missing. Deeming it their next destination as per instructions given by the Ocuria to locate the sun-cryst, Redus lends Balthia's airship a manufactured skystone he'd stolen from the Dracula laboratory earlier to grant it the power to fly over Yagd. Redus joins the party to travel to the Ridurana Cataract, where the sun-cryst is housed atop the Pharaoh's lighthouse. Balthia asks Vaan to take the strahl should something happen to him. At the Pharaoh's entrance, the party comes across a message, carved by the Dynast King Wraithfall himself, as instruction to his descendants who might one day follow in his footsteps. The party finds the sun-cryst at the top, but runs into Gabranth, who has been spying on Ash and her companions to discern her true motives for seeking the throne of Dalmasca, as per orders from Larsa, who wants to convince his brother Vaan of Ash's sincerity. Gabranth attacks them, blaming Bash for holding on to false honor after failing to protect his family and kingdom. He declares himself the true Kingslayer, but the party prevails. When Dr. Sid arrives, having also been following Ash, he blames Gabranth for failing his duty to protect Lord Larsa and dismisses him in disgrace. Rastler's apparition goads Ash to become the Okuria's new dynast's king. And in the abundant mist around the sun-cryst, everyone can see him. Ash realizes the appearances of Lord Rastler are but images constructed by the Okuria to manipulate her actions. She declares herself no false saint for the Okuria to use, and dispels the apparition, who speaks to her in an Okurian voice, pleading her to reconsider. Sid fights the group, using the Esper Famfrit to aid him. He is defeated, but asks Vaan to reintegrate the pieces of deified nethicite to the sun-cryst that begins to spill mist over Ivalice. Vaan attempts to defend Sid, but he asks for it to step aside, seeing his time is up. Speaking to Balthier one last time, Sid disappears into the mist, asking Balthier to do what sky pirates do best: fly. Vaan and Ash try to destroy the sun-cryst, but it is too volatile. Redas takes the Sword of Kings from Ash and reveals his true identity as that of Judge Magister Sect, who had unwittingly destroyed Nabudis with the power of the Midlight Shard under orders from Dr. Sid. Redas sacrifices himself to destroy the sun-cryst, with the others escaping on the straw. The party returns to Balfonheim, where the pirates mourn Redis' passing. They learn the discharge of mist from the sun-cryst activated the largest airship ever built, the Sky Fortress Bahamut, which was Dr. Sid's motive for rousing the Cryst. The conflict has suddenly come to a head, as Marquis Ondor's resistance armies are staging a battle in the skies above Rabanasta against the Arcadian Imperial fleet, led by Vaan and Judge Saga Bath. They arrive on time to witness the showdown, and Vaan mimics Larsa's voice on the airship's intercom to have the Marquis let them pass. They penetrate both the Resistance and Imperial fleets and dock the Strahl on the Bahamut to stop Vaan before the conflict will destroy Rabanasta. Before they reach Vaan, Gabranth arrives to stop them. The party defeats him and leaves him beaten in the elevator. They find Vaan with Larsa at the command center. Vaan eager to show Larsa how a true emperor crushes his opponents, despite Larsa objecting to the war. As Vaan turns against Ash, Larsa helps the party fight him. As Vaan is beaten, his manufactured nethicite sucks power away from Larsa and the ship around him. Seeing that Vaan has turned on Larsa, the wounded Gabranth joins the attack and is struck down. Vaan limps away onto the outside cannon superstructure and calls for Vaan, telling the Okuria it must seek another to realize its ambition of freeing Ivalice from the Okuria's tyranny. Vaan says that with the sun-cryst destroyed, the Age of Stones is over, and the Okuria have lost their influence on Ivalice's fate, thereby fulfilling Vaan's desire. Vaan dissolves, investing Vaan with its power as an undying, and he absorbs pieces of the Sky Fortress onto himself. Vaan is defeated and explodes into a cloud of mist, taking Vaan to the grave with him. The party must now stop the warring factions and halt the descent of the malfunctioning Bahamut, lest it falls on Rabanasta. Boarding the Strahl with Larsa and a dying Gabranth, Balthier has Vaan take the pilot's seat, with Penelo as his navigator. Vaan flies the others to safety as Balthier and Fran return to the Bahamut to try and fix its gloss air rings in time to halt its descent. Over the intercom, Bash, posing as Judge Magister Gabranth, asks for the Arcadian forces to stand down their attack. Larsa takes over the mic and declares Vaan fallen in battle and himself the new Emperor of Arcadia. Larsa announces he has made peace with Princess Ashe of Dalmasca to stop the war. As the Bahamut falls from the sky, Judge Sargaboth wants to place his Alexander on a collision course to ram it clear of Rabanasta, sacrificing himself to save the city. Balthier contacts the Stroll and asks them to stop Sargaboth, as he has made an effort to restart the Bahamut's engines. Balthier tells Vaan to look after the Stroll while he is gone, and Vaan assures Balthier that he will. Bahamut gains power and moves away from Rabanasta, crashing outside of the city, with Vaan and Balthier still inside, despite Ashe's pleas for them to get to safety. A year later, Penelo writes a letter to Larsa. Dalmasca, Arcadia, and Rosaria are at peace. And Rabanasta has returned to the way Penelo remembers it from her childhood. The party is split, each living their separate lives. A month from now, Ashe will be crowned Queen of Dalmasca, so they will not be able to see her anymore. Bash has assumed his late brother's identity, as per the latter's deathbed wish for him to protect Lord Larsa in his stead. As should the last of House Solidor fall, Arcades will be consumed by a civil war. Even if it means Bash will forever be unable to clear his name as the Kingslayer, he took up the judge's armor and became Larsa's bodyguard. Vaan and Penelo had looked after the Stroll until it was stolen. Penelo notes it is not really stealing if the original owner took it back. However, Balthier had left behind Ashe's ring, which he had given to him as compensation for the treasure Balthier did not get in Wraithwar's tomb, implying Balthier has found the treasure he'd been looking for. Vaan flies his new airship to find Balthier, as every good sky pirate needs a partner. Thanks for listening. My throat hurts. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a comment and a like and subscribe if you want more. Bird sounds. My throat.